Hotep, greetings. Uh, we're going to talk about today and get into detail the Emerald Tablets of Tehuti is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Egyptian alchemy, the principles, and how to apply those principles of Egyptian alchemy. The problem that we have today, when you look all throughout the so-called conscious communities, when you look at many people teaching on the Egyptian mysteries, there's various levels of information, out there that exist on these topics of the Egyptian mysteries. No one individual or one group has the lock, per se, or all the answers. But the problem that we have is we get a lot of information which keeps us stuck in the past. We get information, based on back in the day, what we were once in our glory. We get all this information on Egyptian magic and the greatness of these so-called Egyptian deities, but we don't get information that's practical and how we can apply this information. Because without being able to apply a lot of this information that we're being taught, it's useless. You're basically a walking encyclopedia that knows a lot of information, a lot of history, but you're not able to apply that information. So it becomes useless. Now, what I refer to as getting caught in the back in the day syndrome, it's okay to know that past history, per se, when we're referring to Egypt or any great culture. It could even be the Orishi of the Yoruba pantheon. But if you're not fully applying the information that you're getting, it becomes useless. So the Emerald Tablets of Tehuti deals with Egyptian alchemy, self-transformation for your DNA, tapping you into the divine intelligence, which links you into your ancestors. Now, the transformation of the DNA, which deals with alchemy or Egyptian magic, shows you the steps one must take, or the necessary procedures one must take on the path to that what we call self-mastery. Not just reading about it, not just making claims and statements that I'm original or I was first, or all these historical statements that we like to make in this day and time, but again, not putting it into practice. Let's get a little history of the tablet first. The history of the Emerald Tablet. These are just some theories on it. You can research this on your own, but let's go a little bit into the origin of the Emerald Tablet, where some historians are claiming that this tablet comes from, and how it has been passed down in this day and time, what it means to us in this day and time. Okay, a few have postulated that thoth in the Greek, or Tehuti, many different titles that he's known by, was either an extraterrestrial or an Atlantean that wrote the tablet 36,000 years ago, and was incarnated several times over the centuries to propagate its principles. According to other sources, this tablet was created in Egypt about 10,000 years ago. Although some historians point to a date around 3000 BCE, when the Phoenicians settled on the Syrian coast, Egyptian papyri dated as far back as 2000 BCE. They contain many of the same phrases and principles stated in the Emerald Tablet, including references to the one mind and the one thing, the doctrine or the correspondences as above, so below, and the invocation to Hellenistic Egypt. Okay, wherever it came from, the Emerald Tablet contains an extremely thorough history of Hermetic tradition, undoubtedly the oldest spiritual tradition in the West. Okay, now it mentioned the doctrine of the correspondence as above, so below. When studying the Emerald Tablets, it's going to lead us later into, when we get to that point, dealing with the 7 Hermetic principles of Tehuti, which some falsely call today the Kabbalion. Now again, you have many sources, you have many different translations out there, whether you go back to some of the African translations from the original text, going back into ancient Egypt, then as it's been grafted on down and these texts made their way here into the West, when the Greeks and the Phoenicians and the Romans got their hands on it, obviously it got watered down, and then you have European authors that tried to translate some of this text from the hieroglyphics, which some of it was incorrect. So the history of this tablet goes back, according to what some historians say, over 36,000 years ago. Now, what did this tablet teach? It talked about, in detail, some of these steps that one must take for this transformation. Let's go through some of these steps. Let's go through some of the very fabric that's in this Emerald Tablet. And again, this is information that we need in this day and time to get us on that path to self-mastery. All right, let's go through some of the key points. Some of the questions that were posed. Okay. Of one mind, or the universe is mental, which again, that ties into some of the 7 principles of Tehuti. The universe, everything is mental. Okay? There's nothing that you can't conceive mentally in your mind that doesn't exist somewhere in the universe. So when you get into the creation stories of ancient Egypt dealing with the deity Tar, it's stated that Tar thought things into existence. It's the same thing with the mind. Everything that you might create the illusion that you separate outside of yourself was created within. So the biggest confusion one can do is look outside themselves for the answers to the mysteries of the universe, for the full understanding of creation and nature and that individual's part in it. Because the number one question we all ask ourselves is, why are we here? How did we get here? Where are we going? And do we know the steps that we need to take to get to go, or the steps we're taking on how we need to get to where we go? Okay? Let's talk about the doctrine of correspondence, which the Emerald Tablet focuses on and teaches you that the first step in making that divine connection with the cosmic consciousness, with that divine intelligence, is by making one less dense. This is what it's talking about. Now, what that means is, if you're confused, what does it mean to make one less dense? Real simple. It's talking about shedding yourself from things that are physically weighing you down, okay? Such as envy, such as lust, deceit, jealousy, greed, hatred, violence. All physical things that confine one to the physical plane, prevent themselves from making themselves less dense to tap into that divine intelligence. Because one has to perfect themselves. It starts from that point, engaging themselves moving forward. So the doctrine that connects to that is the doctrine of correspondences, as above, so below. That which is below corresponds to that which is above. And that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. And just as all things have come from this one thing, through the meditation of one mind, so do all created things originate from this one thing, through transformation. So it starts in the mind, it starts mental. Okay? Any concept that you can think of, whatever you conceive as deity, whatever you conceive as God, exists in the mind. Where the biggest misconception comes in, when we're spoon-fed mythological and bullshit concepts and fictitious fables of who and what the creator is, or who and what God is, when images are stamped upon the subconscious. Now the same trick is used, as they explain here in the doctrine of correspondences, as above, so below, but it starts with the mental aspect. If an image or a concept can be stamped subconsciously in your mind, it creates the illusion of the one that created the concept as being authentic. Because the trick is not for you to raise yourself up to the realization of what deity is, but somebody instill within the mental, by way of the subconscious, of what they want you to perceive what deity is. That's the key. And what they don't want you to perceive, and how they, I should say, block you or prevent you from perceiving it for self, is they have to control your emotions. They have to control the way you think. They have to instill in you their thoughts, their ideas, and their concepts of what that is. So as above, so below. This relationship that's described here is vertical, and it locates the reader at the center of a living interaction between the above and the below, or between what people call heaven and earth. The cosmic axis, the backbone of God, is the divine image imprinted on all of creation. It extends infinitely upward and infinitely downward, and the only thing clearly defined is the center from which the above and below stretch outward. It is from the central position that the powers of the above and below can be observed and put into action. That balance and viewpoint is achieved, here's the key, through pure egoless consciousness. This is what refers to as the one mind. Let me say that again. This viewpoint, or this understanding of this, can only be achieved and put into action through pure egoless. Okay? Egoless, which a lot of people have a problem with. Egoless consciousness. This is what connects one, or what refers to as the one mind. Ego, let's talk about that. One of the aspects that keeps one dense, because what tends to happen is when you talk about the chakras, when you talk about the divine intelligence and making the connection, if the chakras are blocked, one cannot be open and receptive to receiving that information or that intelligence, whichever title you need or metaphor you need to grasp that understanding. Okay? When that wall is put up, or that invisible veil, and another doctrine we want to get into down the road is the mystery, or what they call the veil of Isis. When that veil of Isis is being lifted, one is now open and receptive to the consciousness or the divine intelligence of the universe. Now, how do they block this connection? Many different aspects. Bad food, bad thoughts, bad information, constantly stamping and feeding the subconscious with mistruths, with false information, lies. So when one is ingesting all that, it is at the same moment that all of that is being ingested, one is disconnecting themselves from their ancestors and from making that connection to be receptive. Because when you're open to the universe will speak to you by way of your DNA ancestors. They will commune with you. You will be receptive to the voice and what's being said by various methods through meditation, contemplative meditation, concentration, and just observance and sitting in silence and listening. The soul, if you want to use that for lack of a better word, or what we call as our conscious or the inner voice, will guide you and put you in the position that you need to be receptive to that. So what does one have to do to start on that process to make themselves less dense? Again, getting on a proper diet. That's number one. We're not going to get into that too detailed in this session here, because that's something we can do a whole breakdown. Getting the proper nutrients. For an example, probiotics. What are probiotics? What we tend or fail to realize is our body on a regular basis, due to all this bad food, bad ingestion of bad air, being in bad climates that are not right for our immune system, not right for our circulatory system, which most of us don't know how to breathe properly. And breath, that's getting into a whole other thing. We'll talk about that. Probiotics replaces the body of the natural bacteria that's being stripped on a daily basis. We don't ingest enough of the proper bacteria that we need to protect ourselves from the elements that we're exposed to on a daily basis. That's one thing. Now, you can get natural probiotics that are refrigerated in many different health food stores. Look into it and research it. There are some reputable companies out there. There are some that are garbage. Don't even waste your time with it. So look into the ones that are natural and supply, millions to billions of different cultures of bacteria that can actually have an effect on the body and getting it realigned or reconnected on a physical level. The alpha brain waves. This is the number one tool that they use against us on a regular basis that actually goes adverse to us and actually disconnects us on an extreme or detailed level. What do I mean? When the alpha brain waves aren't functioning correctly, which the alpha brain waves send out the signals to the universe so you can be receptive and open and receive that information, when that's disconnected and cut off, you can't receive the messages. So one thing that stimulates those alpha brain waves, for an example, are omega fish oils. That keeps them functioning properly. Correct sound waves. Okay, ingesting the right tones, frequencies, sounds, and vibrations is very critical in the proper functioning of the alpha brain waves for one to make themselves less dense. Okay, one way to do that is certain sounds and tones that one takes in on a regular basis. And let's use music for an example. Music can be a very healing force by way of sound due to certain pitches, tones, and vibrations. It can be a soothing effect depending on the way that individual's body vibrates on tones and frequencies. That music can be healing or that music can be damaging. And some of us listen to music that we might like but may be detrimental to us by way of sounds and pitches that's actually unaligning or disconnecting us. So the alpha brain waves, which are also shut down through what we call ELFs. And if you're familiar with ELFs, everybody's probably familiar with that, extreme low frequencies, which are frequencies you may not hear with the physical ear, but are constantly being emitted into the universe that are actually having effect on you, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. And that's emitted into the universe by way of microwave cell phones. Number one, all these different technologies and grids that we've been exposed to over the years that have an effect on our 12 occult nerves and our 9 magnetic particles that are connected to those 12 occult nerves that make the brain function, or the alpha brain waves function at its full capacity. Now, we won't get into, the pineal gland that's connects to all that, because without the proper function of the pineal gland, some pronounce it the pineal gland, okay, you can't receive spiritual impressions, visions. I'm just using metaphors to describe it. Messages, okay. With the proper functioning of those alpha brain waves, it all connects to one of the key elements in this whole piece of the puzzle, the pineal gland. That has to be activated and working at its correct capacity for one to tap into and connect to this divine intelligence. Okay? So we're talking about the beginning stages. We're talking about frequencies, alpha brain waves operating at its full capacity, getting on a correct diet, which is key. Now, a lot of us, believe it or not getting out into nature on a regular basis. Being exposed to the natural elements on a regular basis is a healing force for us. Sunshine, for an example, the most natural form of vitamin D, which being exposed to photosynthesis or trees or the oxygen emitted from growth, vegetation, the greenery, all of this has an effect on the body. Ecology, which that's getting into a whole nother story. So these are key elements. As above, so below. The doctrine of correspondences. This is all connected to that. Let's move on. Let's go on to the next. We're going to finish with a couple more key points from the Emerald Tablets. What is the one thing? It talked about the one thing, the mind. What is that one thing? Okay, we always hear that all is connected, all is one. You hear it from a quantum, physical perspective. What does it mean when it says the one thing or all is one? Do we really know what that means when we say that? Sounds deep, sounds spiritual. A lot of people like to throw it around, sounds great. But do we really know what that means? Let's talk about that real quick. Okay, the one thing mentioned in this tablet is really the main topic of this entire tablet. Why is the one thing so important? Why is the one thing the subject and not the one mind? Because in essence, the Emerald Tablet is not a religious document. Let's stress that. It has nothing to do with religion. This predates religion. This predates the Bible. This predates the Quran. Okay, we know that those stories were grafted from many different cultures, whether you go through Samaria, different parts of Africa, Egypt. We know those stories repeated themselves consistently over time. You can use the story of the Warren brothers in the Bible. It goes back to Set and Heru. It goes back to Shango and Ogun when dealing with the Yoruba pantheon. The list goes on. These stories were recorded in African and Egyptian cultures before they even made it into today's modern Bible. So we want to stress the Emerald Tablet predates what some individuals today would call monotheism. We know those religions only go back a little over 6,000 years ago. We know when we do the research on it, we know Christianity, being the baby or the youngest of all these religions, is a little over 2,000 years old and doesn't have a historical history that goes anywhere near to the level of the Emerald Tablets, going back to some of these sacred texts in ancient Egypt. And the really youngin' of them all, Islam, which is a little bit over 1,400 years old, which basically was a watered-down religion of Christianity and Judaism. And then the oldest of the three, Judaism, barely goes back 6,000 years old. Now, we know for a fact, by just studying basic information that's not even that complicated or deep, we know this planet goes way, way beyond 6,000 years. We know creation didn't start 6,000 years ago. That's the religious concept of their so-called fake beginning. Because if you date the Bible and its origins of creation, and you got a lot of people out there that try to insinuate that when you're reading the Genesis story, which, by the way, the first 7 chapters of Genesis are nothing but the Sumerian stories that the so-called Israelites, when they were in bondage by Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, before coming back into Jerusalem during the time of Ezra to rebuild Solomon's temple, they took those creation stories and started compiling what we know as your Bible today. Now, you'll have a lot of people that will use ridiculous concepts, such as, let's say, the Hebrew Israelites, which is comical. They'll use quotes in Genesis that have nothing to do with or confirming the origin or time frame of creation. They'll give their theories and concepts on it, but we don't want theories and concepts. We want scientific facts. We want historical proofs. Now, we know it can't be the beginning, because when you go into the book of Genesis, for an example, and you read Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 to 28, in the 28th verse, Genesis chapter 1, it says, "And God told man to be fruitful and multiply, to take dominion of the earth and replenish the earth." The Hebrew word there is moleh, to refill, which is confirmation this is not the beginning. Something was already there. Because if I replenish something, I'm replacing something that was already there. Okay? I want to get into that whole religious concept. We can get into that another time. But we want to establish this Emerald Tablet goes back pre-Genesis, or what monotheism labels the origin or beginning of creation. Now remember, when you deal with the doctrine or the correspondences, as above, so below, there is no beginning, there is no end. There's no concept of that. Time is non-existent. Existence is. That's it. It is, because when you put a beginning and an end on something, you confine it to person, place, or thing. Okay, you can't do that when dealing with quantum. Okay, when you deal with the one mind or the one thing, you cannot put a time frame on it. Humans feel the need to put time frames on things so they can have their own comfort zone, because some humans who cannot vibrate at a person, place, or thing have to have that comfort or that crutch to lean on by putting a beginning and an end on something. And that's how religion keeps one trapped, because religion deals with a starting point and an ending point. But where one becomes trapped, when you start with the starting point mentioned in the book of Genesis in the so-called story of creation, they'll tell you in the beginning, the very first verse, Genesis 1:1, God created. It just says in the beginning, but nobody can explain how God got there. And people have their theories on it. And that's a trick in itself, because the word theory, okay, ties into the Greek word theos. And theos is the Greek word used all throughout the New Testament when you see the word God in English. So there's a trick in that itself. That's their theory of how they believe God came into existence. But nobody, you can't have a starting point, but yet then you can't explain the origin of that starting point. That's a trick and a trap in itself. That's the problem with that concept. So the concept of what is the one thing, or what is the one mind, connects one to the proper intelligence or information to dispel that myth. And let's go on. Okay. The one thing, why is the one thing in the subject not the one thing or the one mind? Let me say it again. Why is the one thing the subject and not the one mind? Because in essence, the Emerald Tablet, like we said, is not a religious document. It is a practical treatise concerning a spiritual technology designed to allow man to reach his highest expression, or woman. And the tablet offers an advanced formula for personal transformation and accelerated evolution. Okay? So do all things originate from this one thing through transformation? Is one of the earliest formulations of the idea of the evolution of life. Okay? The one thing as supreme force which cannot be seen and has no perceptible form until it is grounded in material reality by the action or thought of the one mind, the mind of the Supreme Being. In nearly every religion, knowing the name of God bestows great magical power. We'll talk about this for a minute. However, the name of God is the name of the one thing, and both are indescribable, watch this, and can only be directly perceived. So nobody knows the one name of God. They give their interpretation of what they think is the so-called one name of the Creator. Okay, you have titles, you have attributes. People will take you to the so-called Semitic languages and use terms such as Allah, Yahuwah, Yahweh, Adonai. These are titles. Okay, because when I'm saying Yahuwah, I'm just saying in Hebrew, oh, he who he is. Yahweh is a poor translation of Yahuwah when vowels were added into the grammatic language of the Hebrew language. So that's just a poor translation of Yahuwah, and then out of Yahweh came the poor Greek translation of Jehovah, which we know in the Hebrew language there is no letter J. So Jehovah is a very poor interpretation of what they call the God. Then you had another title that some of the ancient Jews referred to the Creator as Hashem, which just means the name. Ha, the, and Shem, the name. And Shem is also translated as rocket ship up there. That's getting into something else. We'll talk about that when we do some information on the gold mining that took place on this planet by way of the Anunnaki and how that all connected to our evolution. Let's get into a whole nother story. Alright, so the name of God is the name of the one thing, and both are indescribable and can only be directly perceived. The fundamental principle is expressed in the ancient myth of Aset and Ra. Okay, and that story goes as such. Aset wanted to become a goddess and knew she had to find out the true name of Ra, the supreme sun god of Egypt, to succeed. So she fashioned a snake, you might be familiar with the story, in the Egyptian text, from the mud made from some of Ra's saliva. Now keep in mind, in order to tap in, to control somebody genetically, you had to get some aspect of their DNA. That's very important. That'll get into other topics down the road. Alright, then it goes on to say, because the snake was made from Ra himself, its venom was the only substance that could harm him. Aset concealed the viper in the dust on the road until Ra visited Earth. Now this is allegorical. We're going to talk about this. When he walked by the snake, it bit him, and there was nothing he could do as the poison coursed through him. Ra felt excruciating pain from the very first time, and in his agony called out to the other gods for help. But only Aset came forward. Tell me your name, she said, and I will cure you. Ra tried to trick Aset into giving him the cure, but she cleverly rebuked him. Finally, Ra said, my name is hidden in my body. Let it pass from my heart to your heart. By directly experiencing the ineffable magic name, Aset immediately cured Ra and became an immortal herself. Here's the message of this story, is that the signature of God is in all things. I'll say that again. The signature of the Creator or God is in all things, but it's not something we can write, or even pronounce. It is simply sharing its heart and seeking its presence. This feeling is experienced by mystics, or what we call amongst the Hermetic or Kemetic community, or esotericism, as divine love. And people don't have an understanding of what divine love is. Okay? Divine love is not love of your car, love of your children, love of your spouse. That's material or physical love. Okay, let's explain. When it says that to understand that sacred name of God is his signature in all things. So when you understand creation, your position in it, you are tapping into that divine love. Simply, what does that mean? Analyzing the sun, or Ra, rising every day. Let's start there. Connected it together, Geb, the earth, which provides the sustenance for us to survive. Appreciating Ra coming up over the horizon and blessing us with its growth by way of its sun rays, growing vegetation, and bringing, as the book of Malachi and the Bible states in chapter 4, verse 2, bringing that healing in its rays or its wings. Geb, which provides that substance. Then you have the deity connected to Geb, Nut, the sky, where all flows forward from, or comes forward from. Tef Nut, the water, which brings its purifying, or she brings its purifying, cleansing properties. Because without that Tef Nut, we wouldn't be able to survive. We would dehydrate, and our bodies would shrivel up. And because of that lack of dehydration, we would seek to live. Okay? And then we also tie it into the principle of Shu, which balances things out, the wind. That wind, which brings its common presence, balances the water and balances the satuk, or the fire, out, can ignite it or can extinguish it. Now, we know in a lot of some of the perceptions in the Egyptian text, falsely, satuk is always perceived as evil, but fire holds two properties. Fire can bring its purifying essence. It can purify one, make one clean and whole, and it can also destroy. So satuk represents an aspect in our nature, our fire nature, which that gets into a whole. So these elements of creation, this is what the divine love is. By understanding this, you're tapping into all things that exist, or all things that show this signature of God, or what we call God. We're using God just as a terminology, just to get you through, which connect all these principles. This is what the beginning steps are. We're going to stop there, but these are the beginning stages of tapping into that divine intelligence, making oneself less dense, and understanding what that divine love is. These are just the beginning stages. We're going to get more into depth. And again, this is the Emerald Tablets of Tehuti. There's many translations out there that you can have access to research. I recommend you get your hands on several of them so you can do the comparison, you can do the research, put things together for yourself. Because, like, again, I want to stress this: not one person has the answer to everything, and I'm sorry. Okay, because you got a lot of fucking whack jobs out there that think they have a lock on the truth, but they don't. The only one that has a lock on the truth is you. You have to come to the realization of truth for yourself. Nobody can tell you that truth. Nobody can claim that they have some sacred information to take you somewhere to give you salvation. And you have a lot of that bullshit going on for years now. And as we now know, by way of the 2012 shift, that everybody was promoting as apocalyptic doom because they didn't understand the Mayan prophecies and the Egyptian prophecies, which was a major shift in spiritual consciousness. Now that shift has come, the bullshit is over. The deception is gone. People that have angles are being exposed. And all these organizations, and hey, it's not a knock on them, but it's reality. Nation of Islam, that shit is outdated. It's old. Nuwapian bullshit, York can't take you to a spaceship. It's not happening. Can't do that when you're in jail. That's a whole other story. We don't want to get into that. Okay? Anybody that's coming saying that they're the only ones that know the truth, stay as far fucking away from them as you can, because they're dangerous. Because that's an individual that doesn't want you to come to the self-realization that you're a deity yourself. And the only way you can do that is by raising yourself up. Nobody can do it for you. Now, I want to stress this. It doesn't mean that you can't study information, because we need elders, we need teachers, we need guides to give us guidance. But it does mean there comes a point in that journey where you have to separate yourself. Where there's a point in that spiritual journey or transformation where you have to let go of the hand and finish the journey and raise yourself up yourself. Nobody can do it for you. Now, the old trick and adage is with a lot of these whack jobs, or I like to say Mickey Mouse clubs that these people like to belong to nowadays, the whole trick is I got to convince you that I have a secret, you understand, some type of secret or information that only I know, that I received from some so-called divine force or extraterrestrial or some being, or I got to bullshit you and say I'm an incarnation of some extraterrestrial. It starts there. That's how I shape the subconscious, you understand, and control your emotions. And I do it by way of fear. And ignorance and fear are the #1 diseases that plague people on the planet today, because it leads to a lack of understanding. So if I can control you through your emotions through fear and ignorance, I can get you to do whatever I want you to do now. So I have to convince you that there's some great secret. And unless you join my organization or you join my group, you won't get that secret. And here's, I like to share with everybody today what that great secret is. You know what the great secret is? There is no fucking secret. That's the illusion that there is a great secret, is what the great secret is, which leads to there is no great secret. The great secret is you're stupid as hell believing that there is a great secret. The great secret is you are the great secret. And if you don't unleash that great secret or unlock it, you will constantly be controlled by others. And the problem with a lot of people, especially in America, with blacks, Latinos, even Caucasians, okay? A lot of these groups that have come over the years, be it Jim Jones Code, David Koresh, be it the Applegate Looney spaceship Hale-Bopp suicide cult a few years back. You have the Nubians today. You have the Hebrew Israelites believe that there's some shit coming from spaceships and they're connected to some God that's going to come and wreak havoc on the planet. All that spookism and bullshit is what keeps us controlled or captivates our emotions. When you look into the essence of it, it's all garbage. It has no substance, and it's not supported by any factual evidence, only by myths, faiths, and dogmas. And when you tear away the myths, faiths, or dogmas, or as I like to say, removing the veil of Isis, you can't be deceived anymore. You can't be fooled no more. You can't be lied to no more. Now, a lot of people will get pissed off because they're not going to like when you talk like this or when you address like this, because that's confirmation that you've stirred or gotten to the very core of their soul, because you're saying something that's rattling their foundation. Now, when you're a mystic, whatever you want to call yourself, when you're a spiritually conscious person, that's another term people use, or if you want to say you're God, if that gets you through the day, you can make that statement because you don't fall up under any of those dogmas, faiths, beliefs, or creeds. I don't believe in Allah, or Jehovah, or Yahweh, or God, or Jesus. So I can make that claim. If the burden of the proof isn't on me to prove it wrong, it's on you to prove that it's right. Because it's easy to prove it wrong. But there's no need for me to even waste effort and energy to prove it's wrong until you prove to me first that it's real. And the bottom line is none of them can prove it's real without using their Bible, their Quran, or whatever religious holy text that they claim that they believe in. They cannot do it without using that. Now, when you deal with the sciences of Egyptian alchemy, or you deal with the 7 Hermetic principles of Tehuti, or the Emerald Tablets of Tehuti, you're dealing with metaphysics. You're dealing with quantum physics. You're dealing with alchemy or magic. You're dealing with the very formulas that form creation of the universe, which explain the mysteries beyond person, place, or thing. So you're dealing with it from a scientific perspective. Science and math don't lie. So when you leave the realm of faith and belief, you have this confirmation to substantiate it. People caught in faith and belief can't do that because they can't leave their holy book, because their holy book dictates to them what's right or wrong, no matter how ridiculous the shit sounds. Doesn't matter how ridiculous it sounds. It has established a creed of rights and wrongs. And individuals become controlled by those right and wrongs and those dogmas, which is really pathetic bullshit. Okay? So we're going to stop there. We're going to continue this on. We'll start posting. As of the date of this posting, today, January 31st, 2015, if you are in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, I myself will be doing a class, a lecture, on February 8th. Let me pull up the information. I'm going to get that information for you, the location. This class or lecture will be this upcoming Sunday, February 8th. Just give me a second to pull it up. I will give you the location and information on that event that we got coming up. Bear with me 1 minute. Pull it up here. Alright, here's the information here. If you don't have to be in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach area. You can come from wherever, but want to especially point it out, if you do live in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach area, I myself at Sophia's Garden of Ma'at this Sunday, February 8th, 2015, from start time 7 p.m., located 3450 Northwest, 169th Terrace, Miami Gardens, Florida. You can call Brother Yehuda at 786-357-1899. That's 786-357-1899 for information on the event. The event is free. There is no charge. We will have a bunch of products there, vendors. There will be books, information there for sale. We just ask you to come out and support. Again, no charge. There'll be food there. So it's going to be a nice event. So if you're in that area, you can, again, contact Brother Yehuda at 786, let me give you that number again, I'm sorry, 357-1899. Also, you can catch us live, me and a few brothers, two of my brothers, we do a show on TalkShoe every other Thursday. That's every other Thursday night from 10 to midnight. The name of that show is called Awakening Universal Minds. We definitely want you to tune into that. It's on TalkShoe.com. If you just go to TalkShoe, go into the search engine and just type in AUM. It'll come right up. If you need a link to that show, you can email me at khnum19. That's knum19@gmail.com. You can email that and we'll send you a link to that show. Again, that's every other Thursday night on TalkShoe from 10 to midnight. Also want to plug in my brother's show, Brother Dry Bones, or the Dry Bones Connection on Blog Talk Radio. My good brother does tremendous work down here in the South Florida, Miami area. He has a great show. He's had many great people on there. Recently had Phil Valentine on there a couple of weeks ago. He's had many other great lecturers, speakers, and teachers come on his show. He comes on every Wednesday night from 9 to 11, and every Sunday morning he does what they call a Helios Biblios hour, breaking down the myths of religion on Sunday mornings from 10 a.m. to noon. So again, that's on Blog Talk Radio, Dry Bones Connection. You can email my brother at drybones7@gmail.com. He can send you the link. But again, if you just go on to Blog Talk Radio and type in Dry Bones Connection, it'll come right up. So again, tune in to his show. More than welcome to tune in to our show. So we'll pick up again talking about the Emerald Tablets of Tehuti, which will lead us into the 7 Hermetic Principles of Tehuti, okay, which will open up the doorways to a whole level of information. So again, I want to leave everybody with, don't be deceived by bullshit. Follow nothing and nobody but yourself. And that divine being that you're looking for exists within yourself, not outside yourself. Because you can't look outside yourself for the Creator. Okay, this is an inward journey out, not an outward journey in. So you can keep looking outside yourself for the answers. You'll never find them. You'll constantly be looking. It's like going on a journey that's worthless. It's like getting to the end of that journey and finding out there's nothing there. So when you get the reality of what that divine intelligence is, get those chakras vibrating, and connect to your ancestors, the doors will open up for you. So I want to say Hotep, peace, and we'll see you next time.